Joining our coverage, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. David's still with us as well. Congressman, your reaction?
Well, Nicole, I wish I could say I'm surprised. You know, when I heard that Kari Lake had been given discretion over Voice of America, you know, this American treasure of many, many generations, which was so critical to fighting and winning the Cold War, I did expect the worst, and this is the worst. I mean, you know, OAN is propaganda. It's not even good propaganda, right? I mean, you played a number of clips there. It just makes up lies. And, you know, and it includes people like Matt Gaetz, who I can tell you a little bit about since he used to be my colleague. And the sad thing about that is that there's still plenty of countries that rely on what Voice of America was always there to provide, which was an alternative viewpoint. Something, and you know, as we'll all agree, all media, you know, and all reporters, even if only through story selection, shows some bias. But, you know, the difference is, of course, that real media make an effort. They don't deliberately propagate lies. And if they do inadvertently tell a lie, they go back and correct it. So now the many, many people of the world who are living under propaganda will be not offered some attempt at the truth. They will be offered simply MAGA Trump propaganda. And that's a really sad moment for this country.
David Jolly, to sort of pick up on the congressman's point, it's in this category of not surprising but completely shocking. Of course, this is not a third rail. This is not something sacred, but it is another indicator of how disinterested this administration is in supporting democracy and democratic messages. Your thoughts to this line being crossed in such a brazen manner?
Yeah, look, VOA may not be a sacred cow, but the truth is, I mean, the truth is still sacred, and I think most people consider it sacred. And so for the mission of Voice of America originally was to, and for decades, was to combat propaganda with truth. Now the mission becomes to combat propaganda with our own propaganda. And in this case, propaganda that is centered around the perfection of our president. Centered around, you know, someone who thinks he should be the next pope. This is all to elevate Donald Trump. And so, yeah, the vanity project is unsettling, but the real heartbreak, I think, is around the injury to truth. And then what does that also mean for an agency, a domestic agency that has been able to be the voice of America that now becomes the voice of Donald Trump? It is unsettling to be a vanity project, but it is more unsettling to know that the Voice of America will become a disinformation platform sanctioned by the United States government, propagated on the world. This is a defeat for truth. This is an injury to our democracy, and one that only gets reversed if the election changes who's in the White House.
Congressman Himes, let me just, for, again, people that aren't that familiar with the kind of content that OAN creates, this is not Fox News, not to say anything, but just to put it in relative terms. And I just want to put up some of OAN's coverage. This is OAN's chief White House correspondent posting on X. President Trump pledged to put America's workers first. He's promoting his economic policies. They've taken a lot of selfies with Donald Trump during the campaign, calling him the people's champion. I mean, this is, it has an echo to some of that reporting, I think, in the New York Times and other places that even Russia is uncomfortable sometimes when the right-wing media is so brazenly complimentary. And I guess that is sort of the category of pro-Trump coverage. It's not just we've looked at all of the policy proposals and Trump's is the best. It's sycophantic. And I wonder, you know, if this is a clear and credible blow to the truth, what can be propped up to fill that vacuum?
Yeah, you know, and it's particularly sad for at least two reasons, right? Number one, we don't talk about it a lot, but we certainly see it a lot, and that is that the Trump administration and MAGA generally is there to try to promote right-wing movements, including some really scary right-wing movements around the world, right? It's not an accident that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, has gone out of his way in Munich and recently to promote the AfD in Germany. The AfD is a party that has its roots in the Nazi Party and is so appalling to most Germans that they have, taken steps to suppress it. Now, that may sound strange to American ears, but we are talking about Germany here, which has in place laws that were passed after, whatever it was, 70 million Europeans and globally people died because of the scourge of Nazism, to be very, very careful about their right wing and what their right wing can and cannot do. And so the Trump administration, whether it's by embracing the National Front in France or embracing a very right-wing government in Italy or deliberately promoting the AfD in Germany, is all about trying to spur hardcore right-wing movements around the globe, even at the expense of the truth. The other thing that's very sad here is, look, people who live in dictatorships are pretty good at sussing out lies. This was always true of, the Soviets reading Pravda. And, people are going to understand that Voice of America, if they go this route, is just another font of lies, and they'll eventually tune out.
Yeah, it's sort of giving up something that won't be replaced by anything with the power that VOA has had. I want to ask you, Congressman, about something that you helped put into motion. That's the declassification of a memo that completely undermines Donald Trump's rationale for using the Alien Enemies Act. I have to sneak in a quick break. I want to ask you about that on the other side. At the top of the hour, in a matter of minutes, a critical hearing is set to begin in a case having to do with Donald Trump's invoking the Alien Enemies Act. The ACLU is asking Judge James Boasberg to order the government, quote, to immediately request and take all reasonable steps to facilitate the return of people deported to the mega prison in El Salvador. Remember, a newly declassified memo significantly undercut Donald Trump's primary reasoning for invoking the Alien Enemies Act in the first place. His own intelligence community has rejected the claim, repeated again and again by the administration, publicly and in court, that the Venezuelan government was directing the actions of a criminal gang. We're back with Congressman Himes and David Jolly. Congressman Himes, what is the significance of this declassified memo?
Well, it's huge, Nicole, right? Because the whole premise of these god-awful flights to El Salvador, and now we're hearing that there may be one to Libya, the whole premise rests on the Alien Enemies Act, which says that in very limited circumstances, the administration can deport people without due process if there's a state of war, which there clearly isn't right now, or in classic 18th century language, there is a predatory incursion. And so the administration, having a few lawyers around, said, well, if we need to justify this in court, we need to be able to make the case that there's an incursion, an invasion of sorts, and that requires Venezuela to be behind Tren de Aragua, this gang that they keep saying that they are deporting. Well, and by the way, it put me in a terrible position because I read that intelligence report in a classified environment about a month ago, and I thought, oh my God, the president is saying that Venezuela is directing this gang. The director of national intelligence is saying that the intelligence community that they sit on top of is contradicting that. They're saying that Venezuela does not direct, that they're not a proxy of Venezuela. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what are they going to tell the Supreme Court? Now, for reasons I can't fully explain to you, that report was declassified, showing that, in fact, whatever thin reed this argument that they can deport people without any due process, and due process is pretty important in this country, that it was completely made up. And so, I expect the courts are going to move pretty quickly here to say what you did was completely illegal, bring those people back, and look, if they're here illegally and should be sent away, that's fine, but you're going to do that pursuant to due process.
I mean, Congressman Himes, so much of what you said seems so important, and in terms of a mile marker and understanding where we are, it feels important. The intelligence community is still functioning in terms of collecting accurate information that was able to dispel the notion that the Venezuelan government had directed Tren de Aragua or had ties to them. Is that reassuring at this point? I know that's a low bar.
Well, it's a pretty ugly indication that, once again, Donald Trump is not particularly interested in the incredible work that tens of thousands of intelligence community professionals do in very dangerous places around this globe to provide him with the best information. That information doesn't matter if it's in the service of what he wants to do. And in this case, it's particularly ugly because, again, I understand that some of these folks that are here on an undocumented basis, the illegal aliens, whatever you want to call them, I understand understand that they may ultimately be deported. But there is a reason why we have this due process. And the president was willing to lie about what his intelligence community knew to be true in the service of getting pretty close to violating really an essential right that we cherish in this country.
David Jolly, let me bring you in on this. I guess we're all old enough to remember when that would be a, banner headline, four-alarm fire political scandal. Sure. But we now have the document churned out and declassified within about, I think, 60 days of this all going down. And we know that Donald Trump is lying about his own intelligence community's assessments.
Yeah, that's right, Nicole. Look, I think it's important in these conversations we always remember that due process is there to protect the innocent. As the Congressman said, if someone is afforded due process and there's reason for them to be removed, nobody's going to object to that. And accountability should apply if you're a natural-born citizen, if you're an immigrant, or if you're a Republican politician. If you did something wrong, you should be held accountable. Due process is there to protect the innocent, and I think people understand that, particularly when they see some of these specific cases where people are picked up simply for trying to comply with an immigration officer, showing up for their regular monthly compliance, and they're the ones being picked up. There's a cruelty to it that I think most people understand. And this is an area where I think a lot of issues come down, not to right versus left, but right versus wrong. And people are looking at what Donald Trump is doing, both through the suspension of due process, but the cruelty with which they're going after some of these individuals, people in many cases just trying to contribute to American culture and the American economy and to appreciate the opportunity they could be afforded here. And Donald Trump is punching down and declaring war on them. People see that. People see that. And I think you're seeing the anxiety of the American public generally able to be rational, like the Congressman said. If someone did something wrong, they should be removed if that's actually the consequence. But if not, they're entitled to due process to protect their innocence and to protect their rights.
Congressman Jim Himes and David Jolly, thank you both for joining us on this.